Hook, Elena, you're not coming with me tonight. Damian Whitmore didn't even look up from his mirror as he adjusted the cuff of his black designer suit. The words landed quietly, cold, sharp. For a second, Elena thought she heard him wrong, but then he sighed impatiently. This is a billionaire charity gala, not a library meeting. And then came the part that changed everything. I need someone who fits the room. Silence. Elena stood there holding the tie he had asked her to iron only minutes earlier. But wait, here's the shocking part. Damian wasn't going alone, because seconds later, a tall blonde woman stepped out of the hallway wearing a silver dress that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Vanessa Blake, a model, young, beautiful, perfect for cameras. And she smiled at Elena like she had already won. What happened next, no one at that gala was prepared for, because the woman Damian called boring, the quiet wife he spent years hiding from elite society, would walk into that same ballroom alone later that night. And before the evening ended, the entire room would turn against him. Not because Elena screamed, not because she caused a scandal, but because of one speech, one truth, and one secret identity Damian never knew his own wife had been hiding. Chapter 1, The Woman He Stopped Seeing. Elena Whitmore was the kind of woman people overlooked until they truly listened to her. She wasn't loud. She didn't fight for attention. And unlike the women Damian surrounded himself with lately, Elena never cared about expensive attention or social status. She liked quiet mornings, books, warm tea, soft music playing, while rain touched the windows of their Manhattan penthouse. Years ago, Damian used to love that about her. Back when they were younger. Back when he still laughed naturally. Back before money changed him. Before investors. Before magazine covers. Before billionaire parties filled with fake smiles and cameras flashing every few seconds. Elena remembered those days clearly. Damian had once called her peaceful. Now he called her boring. Funny how success changes the meaning of simplicity. That evening, Elena stood silently in their bedroom while Damian sprayed cologne onto his neck. "You're seriously taking her?" Elena finally asked softly. Damian grabbed his watch. "Don't start this tonight." "I'm not starting anything." "Good." His tone was flat, dismissive, like speaking to her had become exhausting. From the hallway, Vanessa laughed at something on her phone. The sound echoed into the room. Elena looked down slowly. That tiny moment hurt more than she expected, not because of Vanessa, but because Damian didn't even care enough to hide it anymore. That changed everything. "You could have just told me you didn't want me there," Elena said quietly. Damian finally looked at her, and the expression on his face made her chest tighten. Annoyance, not guilt. "I did tell you." Silence. Then he walked closer. "Elena, look at yourself." Her fingers tightened slightly around the tie in her hand. "You don't even try anymore." That sentence stayed in the air like smoke. Heavy, cool, and for the first time in years, Elena saw something clearly. Damian was embarrassed by her, not because she failed him, but because she refused to become fake for his world. Vanessa suddenly appeared at the bedroom door. "Babe, we're getting late." Elena's eyes lifted slowly. Vanessa smiled politely, but there was something underneath it. Competition, insecurity, the desperate confidence of someone who needed constant validation. She looked stunning, but Elena noticed something else too. Vanessa kept checking herself, adjusting her hair, her dress, her lipstick, again and again, like she was afraid of disappearing if people stopped looking at her. "Elena," Vanessa said sweetly, "you don't mind, right?" Damian said these events aren't really your thing. Damian didn't correct her. That silence hurt more than the words. But Elena only smiled softly. "No," she replied calmly. "I don't mind." And somehow, that calmness unsettled Vanessa more than anger would have. For a brief second, the model's smile weakened. But Damian didn't notice. He was too busy checking himself in the mirror. Always the image. Always the performance. Always the next powerful room. "You should get some rest tonight," he said while walking toward the door. "Try watching one of your documentaries." Vanessa laughed quietly. Elena didn't. She simply folded the tie carefully and placed it on the bed. Then Damien and Vanessa left together. The penthouse became silent instantly, and that silence felt enormous. Elena stood there for several seconds without moving. Then she walked slowly toward the massive window overlooking Manhattan. Below her, the city glowed like gold. Cars, lights, luxury, noise, everyone chasing importance. But there was something Damien never understood about Elena. She had spent years staying quiet on purpose, not because she lacked power, but because she never needed to prove it. That was the shocking truth. Her phone suddenly buzzed. Unknown number. Elena stared at it for a moment before answering. "Hello." A nervous voice spoke immediately. "Miss Vale? We've been trying to reach you all day." Elena's expression changed slightly. Not fear, not panic, recognition. "I know," she said softly. "The gala starts in less than 2 hours." The voice continued anxiously. "The board members are already asking if you're really coming." Elena stayed quiet. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the city sky. "They need you tonight," the voice added carefully, "especially after what happened to the foundation." Another silence. Then Elena closed her eyes briefly. "I'll be there." The caller sounded relieved instantly. "And your speech?" Elena looked toward the empty doorway Damien had just walked through with Vanessa. A small sadness crossed her face. Then it disappeared. "It's ready." She ended the call. But wait. Here's what Damien Whitmore never knew. The woman he called boring, the woman he was ashamed to stand beside, was secretly one of the most respected voices in the country under another identity. Millions of people knew the name Evelyn Vale, the mysterious humanitarian writer and speaker whose speeches inspired global charities, business leaders, and universities. But nobody knew Evelyn Vale was Elena Whitmore, not even her own husband, because years ago, Elena chose privacy over fame. She wanted peace, love, a simple life, and Damien once promised he wanted the same thing. But somewhere along the line, he fell in love with status instead. Meanwhile, across Manhattan, black luxury cars began arriving outside the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Foundation Gala. Cameras flashed wildly. Journalists shouted names. Champagne sparkled beneath giant crystal chandeliers. Inside, billionaires, celebrities, and politicians filled the room with expensive laughter. And Damien loved every second of it. This was his world. Or, at least, he thought it was. Vanessa held his arm tightly as photographers called their names. "Damien, over here." "Vanessa." One more picture. Flash, flash, flash. Vanessa smiled perfectly for every camera. But Damien noticed something strange. People kept asking him one question. "Where's your wife tonight?" At first, he laughed it off. She's not really into public events. But the question kept coming. Again, and again, and again, and each time, something about it irritated him more. Then one older investor smiled knowingly and said something Damien couldn't stop thinking about. "That's unfortunate." Damien frowned slightly. "What is?" The man sipped his champagne calmly. "Your wife was always the most interesting person in the room." And for the first time that night, Damien felt something unfamiliar, unease. But everything was about to change. Chapter 2, the night begins to shift. Damien tried to ignore the strange feeling growing in his chest. But the investor's words stayed with him. "Your wife was always the most interesting person in the room." Interesting? Elena barely spoke at these events. She hated attention. She avoided cameras. How could anyone possibly find her interesting? But wait, that wasn't even the strange part. Because over the next 20 minutes, more people kept mentioning her. Not Vanessa. Not the models. Not the celebrities. Elena. Damien stood near the ballroom staircase while Vanessa posed for photos beside a luxury champagne tower. "You okay?" Vanessa asked after noticing his distracted expression. "Fine." But he wasn't. Another businessman approached him. Older, powerful, one of the foundation's biggest donors. "Damien." The man smiled warmly. "Please tell me Elena's coming later." Damien forced a polite laugh. "She probably won't." The man's smile faded immediately. "That's disappointing." Again, that same reaction. Disappointment. Damien didn't understand it. He spent years building this empire. This gala existed because of him. So, why did everyone suddenly care about Elena? That's your wife. Vanessa whispered quietly after the man walked away. What's that supposed to mean? She doesn't sound boring. Damien scoffed. You don't know her. Vanessa nodded slowly. But deep down, she was beginning to realize something uncomfortable. The room respected Elena in a way it didn't respect her. That changed everything. Across the ballroom, giant screens displayed videos about the Whitmore Foundation, children helped by donations, hospitals built overseas, scholarship programs. The audience applauded emotionally. Damien smiled proudly. This was his legacy. Or at least, that's what he believed. Then his assistant suddenly rushed toward him looking nervous. Sir, Damien frowned. What? There's a problem with the keynote speaker. What kind of problem? She canceled. Vanessa looked confused. Who was the speaker? The assistant lowered his voice. Evelyn Vale. Instantly, nearby conversations paused. Even Vanessa recognized the name. Everyone did. Evelyn Vale was famous without showing her face often. A mysterious humanitarian speaker. An author. A woman whose speeches raised millions for global charities. People admired her because she never chased fame. She rarely appeared publicly. But when she did, people listened. And tonight's gala announcement had exploded online after rumors spread that Evelyn Vale would finally appear in person. Guests traveled from different countries for this event. Damien rubbed his forehead. Did she say why she canceled? The assistant hesitated. No, sir. But her team said there may still be a surprise appearance. A surprise appearance? Damien sighed impatiently. Fine, we'll manage it. But the mood inside the ballroom shifted instantly. Whispers spread everywhere. Evelyn Vale might still come? You think she'll actually appear? I heard nobody knows what she looks like. Vanessa crossed her arms quietly, and for the first time that night, she no longer felt like the center of attention. Meanwhile, back at the penthouse, Elena stood alone inside her dressing room. The city lights glowed through the windows behind her. Soft piano music played quietly nearby. For several seconds, she stared at herself in the mirror, not sadly, not angrily, just thoughtfully. Then she opened a hidden black garment bag. Inside was a gown Damien had never seen before. Elegant, simple, powerful, not flashy like Vanessa's silver dress, but unforgettable. Elena touched the fabric gently. Years ago, she wore that dress during her first international speech as Evelyn Vale. Back before she disappeared from public life. Back before marriage slowly convinced her to become smaller. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from board chairman. We're honored you decided to come tonight. Elena stared at the message silently. Then another one appeared. People need your voice now more than ever. Outside, thunder echoed again across Manhattan. And suddenly, Elena remembered something Damien once told her years ago. You make people feel calm. At the time, she thought it was love. Now she realized something painful. Damien only loved her softness when he still felt small himself. Once he became powerful, he started worshiping louder people. That realization hurt deeply. But wait, it gets worse. Because inside the gala ballroom, Vanessa was beginning to lose control. A famous social media influencer had just mistaken her for Damien's date instead of his partner. Another guest interrupted her mid-conversation to ask where Elena was. Even photographers seemed less interested now. Everyone was talking about Evelyn Vale. Not fashion, not celebrities, not Vanessa. Vanessa forced another smile. But inside, her insecurity was growing rapidly. You never told me your wife was connected to these people, she whispered. Damien looked annoyed. She isn't. Then why does everyone keep asking for her? Damien didn't answer, because suddenly he wasn't sure anymore. That was his mistake. Across the ballroom, giant crystal chandeliers shimmered, while servers carried gold trays through crowds of elite guests. The energy felt glamorous on the surface, but underneath, something strange was building. Tension, Anticipation, like the room was waiting for someone. Then the lights suddenly dimmed slightly. A voice echoed through the ballroom speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight." Applause filled the room. Damien adjusted his suit confidently. Finally, his moment. The host continued speaking warmly about charity, wealth, responsibility, and influence. Then she smiled. "And although tonight has already been unforgettable," she paused, "there is one guest many of you have been hoping to see." The entire room became still. Vanessa looked around nervously. Damien frowned slightly. The host smiled wider. "After years away from public appearances." Another pause. "Evelyn Vale has arrived." The ballroom exploded instantly. Gasps. Applause. Phones lifted into the air. People stood from their seats trying to see the entrance. Even Damien turned instinctively toward the grand staircase. But no one appeared. Confusion spread. Then the host smiled again. "And tonight," her voice softened dramatically, "she has chosen to speak for the first time under her real name." Silence. Pure silence. Damien felt something cold crawl slowly down his spine, because suddenly a strange thought entered his mind. Impossible. No, there was no way. But his heartbeat quickened anyway. And then the ballroom doors opened. That was the moment everything started falling apart. Chapter 3. The Woman in the Black Dress. The doors opened slowly, and the entire ballroom turned silent. Not polite silence, not curiosity. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the room itself stopped breathing. Elena Whitmore stepped inside alone. No cameras prepared for her. No dramatic entrance music. No bodyguards. Just quiet confidence. And somehow that made her even more powerful. Vanessa's face lost color instantly, because Elena looked nothing like the woman Damien left behind earlier. The black gown flowed elegantly around her. Simple, timeless. Her hair rested softly over one shoulder. Minimal jewelry. No desperate need for attention. And yet, every eye in the ballroom followed her. That changed everything. Damien stared in disbelief. For a moment, he genuinely couldn't move, because suddenly he realized something terrifying. Elena didn't look like she wanted approval anymore. She looked like she belonged there. No, worse. She looked above it all. The host walked toward Elena with visible admiration. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice shook slightly from excitement, "Evelyn Vale." The room exploded. Applause thundered across the ballroom. Some guests even stood immediately. Phones recorded everywhere. Vanessa blinked repeatedly, like her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. "No," she whispered. Damien looked completely frozen. Evelyn Vale? His wife? Impossible. But then guests started surrounding Elena instantly. World leaders, investors, celebrities, people Damien spent years trying to impress. And they were all greeting Elena with genuine respect. Not fake social smiles. Real admiration. An older woman hugged Elena emotionally. "It's really you." Another man laughed in disbelief. "You disappeared for years. We thought you retired." Evelyn, you have no idea how much your work changed lives." Damien's chest tightened harder with every second, because nobody looked at him anymore. Not one person. For the first time in years, he became invisible. Vanessa grabbed his arm tightly. "You knew about this?" Damien slowly turned toward her. "No." And somehow, that answer scared Vanessa more than anything else. Because if Damien truly didn't know who his own wife was, then maybe he never knew her at all. Meanwhile, Elena remained calm through all the attention. Soft smile, gentle voice, graceful movements. Nothing forced, nothing fake. And that was exactly why the room loved her instantly. She didn't need validation. She already knew who she was. But wait, the worst part hadn't even happened yet. Because one powerful investor suddenly approached Damien directly. His expression was confused. "Why didn't you tell anyone your wife was Evelyn Vale?" Damien opened his mouth slightly. Nothing came out. The investor frowned harder. "Do you understand how respected she is?" Another donor joined them. She's a reason half the people invested in tonight's charity event. Damien's stomach dropped. What? The donor looked stunned. You seriously didn't know? Silence. And in that horrifying moment, Damien finally understood something. This entire night, this entire foundation, even some of his biggest business opportunities, had quietly been influenced by Elena's reputation. Not his, hers. But that wasn't even the worst part. Chapter 4. The night turns against him. Damien's mouth went dry. The noise of the ballroom suddenly felt distant, muted, like his brain could no longer process everything happening around him, because across the room, his wife was no longer Elena. She was Evelyn Vale, the woman world leaders quoted in speeches, the humanitarian billionaire donors admired, the mysterious voice behind millions raised for global charities. And somehow, Damien never knew. No, the truth was worse. He never cared enough to know. That realization hit him hard. But wait, here's where everything changed completely. Because Elena still hadn't looked at him. Not once. She greeted investors warmly. She thanked foundation organizers. She shook hands gracefully. But Damien? Nothing. And somehow, that silence humiliated him more than public anger ever could. Vanessa noticed it too. The model who had spent all evening fighting for attention suddenly looked painfully small standing beside him. Guests brushed past her now without recognition, without interest. The energy of the room had shifted entirely, and Vanessa could feel it. She leaned closer to Damien. Say something to her. Damien swallowed hard, but before he could move, another shocking moment happened. The host stepped onto the stage, smiling brightly. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, tonight's donations have officially crossed $20 million. Applause exploded instantly. But that's not all. She turned toward Elena. Miss Vale personally matched the final $7 million herself. The ballroom erupted. Gasps, standing ovation, phones recording everywhere. Damien's heartbeat nearly stopped. $7 million? Elena? No, that couldn't be right. His mind raced violently. Elena never lived extravagantly. She rarely bought expensive things. She hated showing off wealth. So where did that money come from? Then the horrifying answer hit him. Books, foundations, speaking deals, private investments, all hidden quietly behind the Evelyn Vale identity. His wife had built her own empire silently, while he spent years assuming she depended on him. That changed everything. Vanessa slowly released Damien's arm, and for the first time all night, even she looked embarrassed standing beside him, because now everyone understood something clearly. Damien Whitmore wasn't the powerful one in this marriage. Elena was. Across the ballroom, Elena finally turned slightly. Her eyes met Damien's for the first time that night. No anger, no bitterness, no revenge, just calm disappointment. And somehow, that hurt him more than hatred ever could, because Damien suddenly remembered every cruel thing he'd said to her over the years. You don't understand important people. You're too quiet. You embarrass me socially. You never belong in these rooms. Meanwhile, those exact same rooms were now worshiping her. The irony felt suffocating. Then came the moment that destroyed him completely. One famous billionaire investor stepped onto the stage unexpectedly. He smiled warmly toward Elena. Before Miss Vale gives her speech tonight, he said, I think everyone deserves to know the truth. The ballroom quieted instantly. The investor continued. 5 years ago, this foundation nearly collapsed financially. Damien's expression changed. What? The man looked toward Elena, respectfully. But one anonymous donor saved it. Murmurs spread across the ballroom. No one knew who it was at the time, the investor added, because she requested complete privacy. Pause. Then he smiled softly. That donor was Elena Whitmore. The room exploded into shocked whispers. Damien felt physically dizzy, because suddenly pieces of the past started connecting violently inside his mind. The sudden business recovery years ago, the mysterious investors who trusted him, the opportunities that appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't luck. It was Elena, His wife had been quietly protecting his empire for years, while he mocked her simplicity. And the worst part? She never once asked for credit. That was the moment the room truly turned against him. People started looking at Damien differently now, not with admiration, with judgment. How could he not know? He brought another woman tonight. After everything Elena did for him? That's cruel. Vanessa slowly stepped away from Damien completely. Her face burned with humiliation, because now she realized she was never the glamorous winner tonight. She was evidence of his betrayal, and everybody could see it. But wait, it gets worse. Because Damien made the biggest mistake of the entire night. Instead of staying quiet, he walked toward Elena publicly, fast, desperate, and emotional. "Elena," he said sharply once he reached her. The nearby conversations stopped instantly. Every camera turned toward them. Elena remained calm. "Yes." That single word shattered his confidence even more. Damien lowered his voice. "You could have told me." Silence. Then Elena gave a small, sad smile. "I tried." That hit harder than a slap, because it was true. There had been signs for years. Phone calls, trips, private meetings, books, awards, interviews with hidden photos. But Damien never listened carefully enough. He only saw what benefited him. And now, the entire ballroom saw it too. That changed everything. The host suddenly approached the stage again. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced gently, "Miss Vale is ready." The room erupted into applause. Elena looked toward the stage calmly. Then she walked away from Damien without another word. And somehow, that hurt him more than rejection, because she didn't walk away angrily. She walked away peacefully, like she had already emotionally left him a long time ago. What happened next? No one in that ballroom was prepared for. Chapter 5. The speech that destroyed him. The ballroom became completely silent as Elena stepped onto the stage. Even the cameras stopped flashing for a moment. People leaned forward in anticipation, because this wasn't just another charity speech anymore. This had become something else, something personal, something emotional. And deep down, everyone felt it. Elena stood behind the microphone quietly. No dramatic entrance. No fake performance. Just calm presence. Then she smiled softly. "Good evening." Her voice was gentle, warm, and somehow stronger than every loud voice in the room combined. "I almost didn't come tonight," she admitted. Small murmurs spread across the ballroom. Damien stood frozen near the back of the crowd. Vanessa remained beside a pillar alone, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Elena continued calmly. "For a long time, I believed being quiet made me invisible. Silence. But over the years..." She paused briefly. "I learned something important." The room leaned closer. Some people mistake softness for weakness. That line hit the ballroom instantly, because everybody knew exactly who she was talking about. Damien's chest tightened painfully. But Elena never mentioned his name. Not once. And somehow, that made it worse. "Tonight," she continued gently, "I want to speak for every person who has ever been underestimated because they weren't loud enough, flashy enough, or desperate enough to impress the world." Several people nodded emotionally. Even Vanessa looked shaken now, because suddenly this no longer felt like revenge. It felt real, and that made it far more powerful. Elena glanced across the ballroom slowly. Then she spoke the sentence that changed everything forever. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone who truly loves you, pause, is make them feel small for being genuine. Silence. Pure silence. Damien felt like the entire room turned toward him without physically moving, because everyone understood. Everyone. Elena looked down briefly before continuing. "I spent years hiding parts of myself because I thought love meant becoming easy to carry." A few people in the audience wiped tears quietly. But love should never require you to disappear. That line shattered the room emotionally. Vanessa lowered her eyes instantly, because for the first time all night, she realized Elena was not competing with her. She never had been. Elena existed on an entirely different level. That realization broke something inside Vanessa too. Meanwhile, Damien could barely breathe. because every sentence Elena spoke exposed him without humiliation, without screaming, without cruelty, just truth. And truth was destroying him more effectively than anger ever could. Then Elena smiled sadly. You know what's funny? Small pause. The people who truly saw my worth. She glanced around the ballroom warmly. Were strangers. That sentence nearly crushed Damien emotionally, because suddenly he understood the deepest truth of all. The entire world respected Elena, while her own husband failed to see her, and that realization would haunt him forever. Elena stepped slightly away from the microphone. I dedicated most of my life to helping people feel seen, she said softly. Tonight, I hope you remember something simple. The room remained completely still. The quietest person in the room, maybe carrying the strongest story. Then silence, long silence, and suddenly the ballroom erupted into the loudest standing ovation of the night. People stood immediately, applauding, cheering, some emotional, some shocked, some inspired. But Damien, he couldn't move, because while the room celebrated Elena, he realized something devastating. He had already lost her, and in that moment, everything changed forever. Chapter 6. The man who lost everything important. The applause lasted nearly 2 full minutes. But Damien barely heard any of it. He stood frozen near the back of the ballroom while the entire crowd surrounded Elena with admiration. People wanted photos, conversations, handshakes. Investors praised her. Women hugged her emotionally. Even powerful men who once ignored Damien were now waiting patiently just to speak with her. And the painful part? Elena handled all of it with the same quiet grace she always had. No arrogance, no revenge, no need to humiliate anyone. She simply existed honestly. And somehow, that destroyed Damien more than public humiliation ever could, because now he finally understood the truth. Elena had never been boring. He had simply become too shallow to recognize depth. That realization hit him harder every second. Meanwhile, Vanessa stood alone beside the champagne table, completely forgotten by the room. Earlier that night, cameras chased her everywhere. Now nobody cared. And for the first time in years, Vanessa saw herself clearly too, not as the glamorous woman who won, but as someone used to fill empty spaces in insecure men's lives. She looked across the ballroom at Elena again. No jealousy this time, just quiet respect, because Elena had done something none of them expected. She won without cruelty. That changed everything. Near the stage, several reporters gathered around Elena excitedly. Miss Vale, why reveal yourself now? Will you continue public speaking again? Did your husband know about your identity? That last question made the room suddenly quieter again. Everyone waited. Even Damien looked up slowly. Elena paused for a moment. Then she smiled politely. No, she answered softly. And somehow, that single word carried years of heartbreak inside it. The reporters exchanged stunned looks. One woman asked carefully, how is that possible? Elena's expression remained calm. Sometimes, she said gently, people only see the version of you they've already decided to believe. Silence. Another emotional wave passed through the ballroom, because deep down, everyone understood exactly what she meant. Damien lowered his eyes. Every memory now replayed painfully inside his head. The nights Elena tried talking while he answered emails. The dinners he canceled. The speeches he never listened to. The books he never bothered reading. The softness he mocked. The kindness he overlooked. And worst of all, the love he slowly replaced with embarrassment. That was his real failure. Not business. Not reputation. Her. But wait. The final twist was still coming. Because suddenly, the chairman of the foundation stepped onto the stage again. He smiled warmly toward Elena. There's one more announcement tonight. The ballroom quieted once more. The chairman continued. Earlier this evening, Elena Whitmore officially accepted our request to become the new global director of the Whitmore Foundation. Gasps spread instantly. Damien's head lifted sharply. What? The chairman smiled proudly. Beginning next month, she will oversee all international charity operations personally. The crowd erupted into applause again. But Damien felt the ground disappear beneath him, because he finally understood what this meant. The foundation, his biggest legacy, the empire tied to his family name, would now forever be connected more to Elena than to him. And the horrifying truth? Everyone preferred it that way. That realization shattered the last piece of pride he had left. Across the ballroom, Elena looked genuinely surprised by the standing ovation around her. She placed one hand gently over her heart. Still humble, still soft, still the same woman Damien once loved before greed and status poisoned him. And suddenly, he missed her, not the idea of her, not the comfort she gave him. The real Elena, the woman who made quiet feel safe, the woman who never competed for attention, the woman who stayed loyal while he chased validation from strangers. But now it was too late, because some losses happen slowly, until one day they become permanent. Damien finally walked toward her again. This time there was no ego left, no performance, no cameras in his mind, just regret, pure regret. Elena, she turned slowly toward him, and for the first time all night, Damien looked smaller than he ever had before. Not financially, emotionally. His voice cracked slightly. "I didn't know." Elena studied him quietly for several seconds. Then she gave a faint smile filled with sadness. "I know." That answer broke him completely, because she wasn't angry anymore. And sometimes, a woman no longer being angry is the loudest ending of all. Damien swallowed hard. "I was wrong." Silence. The ballroom around them faded into distant noise. Elena looked at him carefully, and for one brief second, Damien hoped, but then she spoke softly. "You stopped seeing me a long time ago, Damien. No shouting, no cruelty, just truth, and truth hurts differently when spoken gently." Damien's eyes lowered instantly, because he knew she was right. He had spent years searching for beauty in loud places, while ignoring the rare kind quietly sitting beside him every day. That mistake would haunt him forever. Elena glanced toward the ballroom one last time before reaching for her coat. The same simple elegance, the same calm strength. Nothing about her had changed. The only difference now was that the world finally saw what Damien failed to appreciate. Vanessa watched silently from across the room as Elena walked toward the exit alone. And strangely, even she looked emotional now, because tonight forced everyone to confront something uncomfortable. Real value doesn't beg to be noticed. It simply exists. And eventually, the world notices on its own. Outside the ballroom, rain had started falling softly across Manhattan. Black luxury cars waited near the entrance while cameras flashed endlessly behind her. But Elena paused briefly before stepping into her car. She looked back once. Through the glass doors, Damien still stood alone inside the ballroom, watching her, regretting everything too late. Then Elena entered the car quietly, and this time she didn't look back again, because sometimes the strongest revenge is not humiliation. It's healing. It's peace. It's finally realizing your worth after years of shrinking yourself for someone else's comfort. And somewhere inside that glittering ballroom filled with powerful people, Damien Whitmore learned the most painful lesson of his life. The woman he called boring was the most extraordinary person he had ever known. He just recognized it too late. Final ending. Sometimes, the people who speak the softest carry the strongest power. And sometimes, the greatest mistake a person can make is underestimating someone who truly loved them, because once they finally stop trying to prove their worth, that's usually the moment you realize how much you needed them. But by then, it may already be too late. And you? What would you have done if you were Elena?